I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7 p.m. We'll take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll have the coordinator call the roll.
Mr. Dixon, Mr. Rollins,
Here. It's Con or something.
Mr. Scrivano,
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch, Mr. Siegel,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Mr. Escobedo. With 4 present, 3 absent, we have a quorum.
Sorry, my mic decided to go do something silly there. I'd like to recognize Connor Childers, who's helping us in the back with the broadcast on Channel 20 for Comcast. Thank you, Connor, for being here. We do not have any petitions or communications from the public tonight, but we do have something. If you wouldn't mind all joining me in recognizing someone who's having a birthday today, Heidi Detman. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Heidi. Happy birthday to you. All right.
That's a board member comment.
There you go. Okay. You can blame Kelly for that one. Okay. Okay. So, all right. So we will move on to board member comments. Are there any board member comments?
That was your comment.
Oh, that was my comment. All right. Mr. Connor.
Just a reminder for everybody that there is a ribbon cutting this Friday, I do believe, at 3 p.m. Out at the new Cherry Valley School, and we are fantastically excited about it.
Very good. Any other board member comments? Not, we'll move on then to the consent portion of our agenda, including the following: meeting minutes from July 10th, 2018, payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, construction bid request log for the July special check run, the construction bid request log, contracts under 10,000 and travel, the bid recommendations for technology services compensation analysis, pizza, and bus oil. Those shouldn't be back to back, but those are bid okay. Recurring contracts, Telesolutions Consultants, the Center for IRC Resources for Teaching and Learning, the AT&T Network Connectivity for Dennis School, the Northwestern Illinois Association contract, the Sunbelt Speech SLP contract, Therapeutic Day contract, and the workers' compensation agreements for CHCL and CKW. The resolution authorizing and directing preparation of the tentative 2019 and 20 budget, the Illinois State Board of Education Early Childhood Grant Acceptance, and the Freedom of Information Log. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Mr. Rollins.
9E.
9E, okay. Any others? Now I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the consent items not pulled.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
The motion passes with 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Thank you. I'll now take a motion and a second for the approval of item 9E, which is the Illinois State Board of Education Early Childhood Grant Acceptance.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Discussion or questions? Mr. Rollins.
My only I don't know who was going to answer this, but my only question is on the local contribution, which is in the PDSA, the total is listed as $2.6 million. We've had various figures given us over the years, and we also had a discussion with some of these grants about possibly leveraging them to reduce the local contribution. I'm wondering if somebody could tell me how that compares with previous years. Is it going up? Is it going down? Where are we at on that?
Kimberly is here.
So, Mr. Rollins, the numbers I used for the local contribution was just a district average of the number of teachers that we are funding locally. The number by teacher salary goes up and down based on who's in there, so I thought the most consistent information to give the board moving forward was use the average district teacher salary and the average salary for paras. So that might account for that. We did write for some additional classrooms. We did not get funded at the level that we had hoped for, so we were unable to take over some of those.
Thanks.
Any other questions or discussion? Now I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 9E, the Illinois State Board of Education Early Childhood Grant Acceptance.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes as 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Thank you. We are now on to the closed session consent agenda items, including the following: appointments of Jason Ware as a 10-month certified dean at Eisenhower Middle School, the appointment of Carly Sigmund as a 10-month certified dean to be placed at Beyer Elementary School, the appointment of Samuel Klopman as a 10-month certified dean to be assigned to Guilford High School, the appointment of Katie Mersman as a 10-month elementary assistant principal to be assigned to Bloom Elementary School, the appointment of Brad Smith as a 10-month elementary assistant principal to be assigned at Conklin Elementary School, the appointment of Gregory Hodges as the 11-month principal at Barber Two-Way Immersion, the appointment of Ann DeLang as a 12-month director of operations, the appointment of Jason Barthel as a 12-month executive director of technology, the appointment of Amy Galvin as a 12-month certified director of special education, the appointment of Ashley Cameron as a 12-month assistant principal at Guilford High School, the appointment of Yashika Simpkins as a deputy general counsel, the open enrollment benefits appeal, and the HR organizational report and addendum, and the following student discipline case, unless otherwise modified below. The board adopts and accepts the hearing officer's findings and recommendations in the following cases in which students expelled or suspended are prohibited from being on school grounds and school-sponsored activities without the prior written permission of the principal. Student 4204 is expelled through the end of the 2019 school year. The EIA for student 3403 was also approved. Is there a motion and a second to approve these closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any items that board members would like to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing not, I will have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes as 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Our next agenda item is the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Mr. Scrivano. I want to echo Mr. Connor's sentiment that we have a huge event coming up on Friday. It's nice to celebrate the opening of a new school at Cherry Valley Elementary, and looking forward to sharing that building with the community. Obviously, a lot of folks have already had the chance to spend some time in there, but it's our formal opportunity to show this 21st century learning environment. Additionally, I wanted to commend our team. We had a lot of outstanding work that went into pretty dramatically changing our Institute Day process, and we are really looking forward to inviting our teachers back on Thursday and Friday this week, and our certified staff. I think we have a really well-designed event that is going to showcase lots of opportunity for professional development in 3 key areas. We're going to be talking about improving student achievement through improved teaching and learning, so a lot of academic content, and we also are going to have an opportunity to focus on how we're going to use continuous improvement in the classroom. And finally, we're going to have lots of opportunities to learn more about climate and culture, and there's a specific emphasis on social emotional learning. Had the opportunity, along with Mr. Dotson, to listen to about 24 different faculty meetings to provide feedback, and I think faculty and staff in these buildings, along with our principals and assistant principals, are going to see that that feedback was taken into consideration. So we're very excited to invite everyone back and have a really strong opportunity and series of opportunities for professional growth this week. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to our action items for tonight. Our first action item is the approval of the certified school psychologist Callie Dixon. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion? Not out of the coordinator, then call the roll on the approval of action item 14A, the certified school psychologist Callie Dixon.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes with 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Our next action item is the instrument donation from Rockford Symphony Orchestra. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Connor, second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Siegel.
I only want to make a comment. All of the items that are used by the students as tools for education are by their very nature personal, because these little persons are using them. But this is kind of an extraordinary gift, because musical instruments, I think, are extraordinarily personal, and that people were generous enough to part with these really personal items to be used by these kids, I think is just absolutely exceptional. So thank you very kindly.
Mr. Connor.
I echo what Mr. Siegel said, and having been in an orchestra in the Rockford Public Schools, by the way, I can tell you that the instruments are greatly appreciated. Thank you to the Rockford Symphony Orchestra, number one, for thinking of the public schools, because we are always grateful for any contributions, and the second part is that love for the arts starts early, so this is a great gift that will be appreciated across the entire district, so thank you.
I guess I will also add a comment that I know that the band Grandpas had a lot to do with this. So Dr. Arnie Rosen and your group, thank you for all you do for Rockford Public Schools related to music. So we'll call the roll on the approval of this item then.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
The motion passes with 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Our next action item is 14C, which is the Lego Education Partnership. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Connor.
Number one, thank you to the academic side of the house for really pursuing this one. They did a really good job at the committee of the whole describing this. And when I have talked to community members about this, they actually were pretty excited, because Lego itself has a good reputation, and the fact that we're applying this here and using it as part of our academic enhancement really shows the commitment of the district to STEM and to the fact that we're incorporating this into our curriculum.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 14C, the Lego Education Partnership.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
The motion passes with 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Our next item is 14D, which is the Follett Resource Manager Program Mrs. Yar presented. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the Follett Resource Manager.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
The motion passes with 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Thank you. And our next item is the approval of the Danielson Consulting Group contract for Institute Days. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussion? None. Have the coordinator then call the roll.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes with 4 yeses, 3 absent.
And our last final action item is the Schoolology Learning Management System. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Connor.
I only want to say I was one of the ones that made commentary on this at committee of the whole. Again, good job from the administration presenting on this. And I will say that I know LMSs have had a history of having some issues, but it sounds like this is well thought through. Certainly, the presentation and all that was very good, and so we look forward to incorporating this one.
Any other questions or comments? Now I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of item 14F, the Schoolology Learning Management System.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
The motion passes with 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Thank you. We are now on to new business. Totally. I didn't do it. Okay. Has our next items that will include an easement and a whole bunch of policy revisions.
All right, this shouldn't take longer than a couple of hours.
Okay.
So the first is an easement to be granted to the city to allow a stoplight to be placed at Auburn Street and Pierpont Avenue. If you have any questions
Okay.
about that?
Mr. Siegel.
Could we have a roundabout instead?
Oh, no, okay, no, so, I believe we've had some pretty severe auto accidents at that intersection.
Yes, yes, and that's,
With people pulling onto Auburn Street from
Yeah.
Pierpont, yeah.
so it really does pose a safety hazard, and so it's a good thing that they are putting a light there now. And now with that, I'll start on the different policies. The first policy and the first two really deal with updates in some of the election laws. So 2.30 sets forth that the board secretary will serve as a local election official for the purposes of referenda. So that's nothing all that controversial. It just reflects state law. The second one as well, it provides that if a vacancy occurs on the board with less than 868 days remaining in the term or less than 88 days before a regularly scheduled election, the board can appoint somebody and they'll fill for the remainder of the term. Board Policy 2.120. That particular one was updated just to mirror board training language in SB 100, which deals with student discipline. So you all are required to be trained on that and have been. The board committee policy 2.150 change was requested by a board member, and that reflects language that is similar to what the city does for public comment before a meeting at the city. So it would provide for limitations similar to what the city has, just for the committee of the whole meetings, not for the board meetings.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
do you want us to wait for any questions till the very end or as we go?
I'm happy to address them as we go.
Okay. On this one, on the committee structure, in paragraph 6, technical note, but I pointed out to Mrs. Hoadley that the standing committees, talking about of what the consistency of that is, and there's really only one standing committee right now, which is Committee of the Whole, and I don't believe these apply there. I assume that these would apply to the special committees.
So to clarify the language.
Yeah, just to clarify the
Okay.
language that, about the standing, or that it would apply to any committees that, whatever the language is, just to make sure that that's clear.
Sure. So I'll revise it before the next board meeting.
Yeah.
And I'll send it out to all of you.
Okay, thank you.
2.260 has just been updated really to reflect changes in state law. So what that does in particular is it adds to the list of complaints that may be brought or brought under the statutes, breastfeeding accommodations for students. So if someone is dissatisfied with the accommodations provided by the district, it provides a grievance mechanism to them. Similar, the Employee Credit Privacy Act has been added to the list as well. So if somebody has a grievance under that, they can file it under the Uniform Grievance Policy. It adds some clarifying language in there but again, nothing really substantial. The next set are really deal with special programs, and in particular, if you take a look at 6.135, it's the Accelerated Placement Program that reflects a recent change in state law. So the policy meets that criteria, and it's nothing unique to our district in particular, because we've already had different accelerated programs for students, so it's really nothing that unique for our district. The other ones that deal with the special programs, outside counsel Kathy Vanderbrook had been asked to look at the different policies and work with Heidi's group to make some changes on that, and so these are those changes, really just some clarifying language there.
Mr. Rollins, did you have a question?
Was on. Back on the uniform grievance procedures, so you said that you added the Employee Credit Privacy Act, but we already had the Employee Credit Privacy Act on there, so now we've got it twice, but two different sections. I mean, is there a way to just streamline that?
Yes, because it looks like they changed the two sections, so we can streamline that. Yes, we can.
All right, thanks.
All right. Then there is, the last two policy changes are 7.265 and 7.300, and that just reflects recent changes in the Youth Sports Concussion Safety Act. And these policies have been provided to Mr. Parker, and they'll be sent out to, if you approve them, the changes will be sent out to the different coaches and stuff that it impacts. Mr. Connor has.
Mr. Connor?
Yeah, this is more of a question, but on L, it says 7.300, co-curricular activities, which is the content, and then it says co-curricular athletics, and that also is the first part of this. So even though the language was updated, I think, specific to athletics, I think this is still about co-curricular in general, not just athletics, isn't that true?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Just, I don't know if it's wording right there or in the top, but I just want to make it clear that this policy refers to all co-curricular and not just athletics.
Yes, we can make that change in
Yeah,
the title.
thank you. Yeah.
Other recommendations or questions, issues? These will be presented at our August 28th board meeting for a vote. Any other business for tonight's meeting? Now I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
Mr. Siegel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 7:23.
Essentially.